And we are live. Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Conversations from the Front Porch. I'm Hollis Thomas, your host this evening for episode 13 with Nettie Reynolds. And Reinvention Works is the destination to empower people and businesses to make significant change in their life with tools, resources, networking, and marketplace. And the purpose of this live webcast every week is to do just that. It's meant to instruct and inspire and to provide you with real world stories from real world reinventionists who've walked this journey before. So what we're going to do is let you know what's going to happen. We're going to run our interview pretty much to the top of the hour, 9 p.m. Eastern time, after which I'll open the floor up for Q&A. But before we get going with our introduction to Nettie altogether, I'm going to let you know that we are casual and comfortable on the front porch. I'm always here with my glass of wine, well, usually, and it's always something different. This evening, I'm drinking a new rosé. I went to the store, and some nice lady said, "Oh, this is a very nice rosé. It's only about $10. It's called Rosé d'Anjou. D'Anjou is French for pear, and it sort of does taste like a sweet pear, so it's a little sweet and light. It's very nice. Nettie, what are you drinking this evening, even if it's water? Just tell us about it.
Actually, it's a Robert Earl Keen beer because I'm a Texas girl, and it's almost 100 degrees outside today. So that's my good beer, and that's his label.
There you go. So sitting on the front porch with our wine and our beer, we're going to have a good old time. So Nettie, why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself? You know, I think your story is just so fascinating and so courageous. You have walked quite a million miles, and you're doing a major pivot. And I think that makes your story different. So please give us about 5 minutes, because you know I'll be timing you.
Okay.
About your story and where you are today, how you got here.
Okay. Well, so where I am today, I'm actually sitting on the campus where I live with my teenager Gibson of the Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. And I'm in the process of finishing my graduate degree in Master of Divinity. And I am working toward being an interfaith hospital chaplain, which is something I've wanted to do since I was about 12 years old. While all the other kids were reading Nancy Drew, I was reading Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on death and dying. And so it's just something that I've been interested in doing for a very long time. And before I got here, I owned my own PR and communications agency called Nettie Inc. And I worked on behalf of authors to help make their books bestsellers, or to help them repurpose their content. And then I worked for some musicians occasionally. And before that, for about 10 years, I was a technology journalist, and I worked for Ziff Davis Media and Publish.com and sites like that. And I wrote stories about startups.
So how does one go from being a technology journalist, which, you know, you were an English major in college, correct?
Yes, I went to Goddard College in Vermont.
Right. So
that majored in English.
And becoming a journalist, I think, is a natural course of transition for an English major. And then you went over to the dark side and became
That's right. That's right.
So I understand that transition, but and though you might have been interested in this as a child, how did you really decide that this was going to be what you wanted to pursue as a profession?
Well, I'm 50 now, and I went through a divorce at 45. And my plan was, once both my teenagers, who are amazing, got through college, then I would come and study here at the seminary and work as a hospital chaplain the rest of my life. But I was thinking that was going to be around when I was 60. And when I got divorced, I decided to go ahead and divest of everything that I could and come to school here and start this new career early. And so James Hollis calls that having a midlife opportunity instead of a midlife crisis. So I took that midlife opportunity and came here to be a chaplain. And like I said, I've been wanting to be a hospital chaplain since I was very young. I used to stalk chaplains the same way that I used to stalk writers, that I enjoyed. I went for about 10 years around interviewing different chaplains, and finding out and asking them if I should be a chaplain, which they always told me if I had found them to ask them that, then I probably was meant to be a chaplain, because they really didn't have people just come find them and ask them how to be a chaplain. And so that shift where I decided I wanted to come out of the working world and really be of service in terms of my own soul service, what I felt the universe and God were calling me to do, and to just be of service to other people.
So, let's just for the audience's benefit, why don't you explain what a hospital chaplain does?
Well, I think they do all different things, and I'm not an expert. I'm an intern, really. So I do not want to speak for all hospital chaplains, but I think the biggest thing they do is they listen, and they make space in the room for people to ponder things that can't be pondered on charts or with data or with expectations of, how long our life is. They ponder bigger things. When you're in a hospital, you're vulnerable, and sometimes you just need someone to listen. I kind of think of myself as this will date me, but the priest that was on MASH that everyone went and talked to, and you leave your dogma at the door. So when you go inside that room, you really are just a sacred hand holder. And so it's a real privilege, and it's actually a really joyful job. I think a lot of people think you're just, kind of walking around in dark clothes and coming in and it's all sad, but it's actually really wonderful. And there's a lot of wonderful, amazing things that you can encounter every day at a hospital that you can't encounter anywhere else in life.
And you wanted to do this from the time that you were a little girl. So
yeah,
that's really interesting. Did anybody ever question you when you were making this significant change?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I even, when I first went to therapy after I got divorced, I had a therapist that told me, well, this is because you are a caretaker and you're trying to find the biggest caretaker thing you can do now. But what I really felt was it was so right to do what I had always wanted to do. And I used to come up and sit at this campus when I was doing PR, and sit in the chapel and think, well, I'm going to be here when I'm 70. And so to get here 20 years before was just really incredible. And what's really wonderful is my family has been incredibly supportive. Both my kids, when we moved onto the seminary campus, I told them, I'll pay for the therapy session where you tell the therapist that your mom had a midlife crisis and moved you to a seminary campus. And that's okay if you don't like it, but my whole family has been really good. And the seminary here has been really amazing in that they allow people to have their midlife opportunities in such a fashion and come to school here, because I'm an older graduate student, absolutely. And it's been lovely.
Yeah, I was going to say how, kind of jumping ahead to my questions about support and what kind of, outside of your family, what kind of support did you receive? Since you mentioned it, why don't we talk about it now?
Just the support outside my family. It's funny. I was sitting with a client at the David Letterman show, and this was probably about 10 years. I was probably 38. And he told me at the show, he said, because he knew I wanted to be a chaplain. And he said, just because you're really good at something doesn't mean you have to do it all your life. You're really good at PR, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what you have to do all your life. You can be good at a lot of things. You're a really good listener. And so what's been really profound for me is that most of the clients that I had just really have been incredible in terms of looking at this giant change and being supportive of it. It's really been amazing. And they've illuminated to me that one of the best abilities that I had as a PR person was to just sit and listen and be calm in the midst of a crisis, So those same talents I'm able to use to something that I just really, really, truly love and feel deepened by. And that was really important to me after I got out of my marriage, to find something that I could do that would be inwardly focused and be of service to other people.
Do you think if you hadn't gotten divorced, you would be at this place?
I would still be here, definitely, but I think I'd probably be the old lady walking around with a cane. I think I'd probably have done it when I was 65 or 70, but absolutely, I'd still be doing it. I used to have dreams where I would be in all white in the bottom of a hospital basement in a kitchen, just washing white dishes. So those were really leading me to doing this work, and just being of service. So yeah, I would have accomplished it at some date. I would have figured out a way to do it because I'm pretty scrappy, and that was a good quality in PR. You don't need to be so scrappy in in chaplaincy, which is good because I'm older and I'm kind of tired and it's hard to be scrappy. You need more naps. But I'd still be here. I'd have figured it out.
Yeah, and so do you, I mean, I clearly feel like this has been your calling. I mean, it's echoing in your dreams, and you have people who are recognizing it, and you openly talked about it. But what was it like for you to make the decision, okay, I've had this significant life change. I want to follow a passion, and then what? Like
It was very scary.
Mhm.
It was very, very scary. And you had to write an essay to get into school here, and I hadn't even written an essay in years. And so my daughter made me stay up one night, all night, about a week before everything was due, to show me how to write a college essay again. And she said, you start out with a thesis, everyone should have a pug because we have a pug. And so then she said, you put the arguments for and against why you should have a pug. And then at the end it with, that's why you should have a pug. So I started out with a thesis of why I wanted to be a chaplain and what it was that called me to that. But it was very fearful, and I was really scared. And I still have to get over it because I'm actually an introvert by nature, but I seem extroverted. So I have to get over every semester going down the hill. I actually just walk down the hill from my house to where the classrooms are. But I have to get over being afraid of going into the classroom and, having to speak up for myself and not being in charge. And so there's all these little things that I have to kind of do and monitor in order to keep doing what I want to be doing. And the other big thing was the issue of money in terms of, reducing, my own economical, things that I was used to my economy, reducing it to, I got this great book, Your Money or Your Life, by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez. And I studied that a lot, and it has a lot in there about what your time is worth and how that calculates and all the ways that we spend money that we can save on. So I think that's a really big leap when people want to reinvent their life. I think the first thing that you come up against is that I'm going to make a lot less money. And yeah, I will make a lot less money, but the trade-off for me in terms of how I can live and live in the moment is more important to me. And I did not have a good work-life balance with my PR. And I am learning now with the chaplaincy that, if you overachieve being a chaplain, you're going to get burned out. So if you sign up for everything and you do all the shifts, eventually it's going to become like any other job. And so I've really started to learn, especially from my supervisor, how to balance my want to do something that I really love with not overachieving, not trying to overachieve or be at the front of the class.
Interesting. And how about that, all that noise in your head when you were thinking about making this change and, applying, but you hadn't quite gotten in yet? Was there a moment where sort of you cross that chasm and then everything was quiet and you knew that you were in the right direction?
Yeah, and actually there were little moments like that where I could see there is a way to do this, and there's a reason that I can't but not do it. So in a way, the the idea to do it became so much stronger and louder over the want to stay in the career that I had. And I was really good at my career, but I had a lot of I didn't feel very connected to what I was doing. I was good at it, I was skilled at it, but I didn't feel a connection. And actually, a lot of my clients taught me this deeper feeling because I would work for people who really loved what they were doing,
Mm,
and I could tell a difference.
right.
I could really see that their work, they were excited to wake up in the morning, and they were excited to, be going on shows or whatever they were doing. They believed what they were telling people, and they were excited to live that life. And so in a way, even working in the world that I worked in, that was a really big world and really kind of in some ways a superficial world, led me to an interior path that I wouldn't have found otherwise.
Right.
But it's a daily thing. It's a daily thing. There's lots of days where I think, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But, when you get kind of further down the trail, you can't turn back. You just have to keep looking, for the kind of the break in the forest. And then you go down that next path, and you kind of keep going. You're not going to go back.
So let's translate this for people who haven't quite, they don't have a calling like a strong, profound calling like you've had.
Uh-huh.
But they like you, they're good at their jobs, but they're
Mhm.
just not feeling satisfied in their soul.
Yeah.
What would you tell them that the work that they need to do to find that? How can you relate to that?
I would tell them that if you're working every day at something that you feel satisfied in, and you don't hear any call on it, and the call can be, hey, I want to go outside and start a landscaping company. I mean, it doesn't have to be this noble, and I don't know how noble chaplaincy is really, because you get to sit around with people and just listen to their stories, which is a great benefit to the chaplain, getting to listen. So I don't think it's that unselfish of a job. But in anything, I think if you realize you're kind of stuck in a rut, that you can start listening to that rut, and it might be a work-life balance thing. It might be that you're not doing enough for self-care. It might be that you need to find a new hobby. When I got divorced, I learned how to play the ukulele very poorly. I learned the Mary Tyler Moore theme first, and then I learned Amazing Grace, and then I learned how to hula hoop. And so those were two things that I thought would kind of bring back my childlike spirit, which I really needed. And so it might be just something like that. I don't know if all of us can identify with deep calling, but I think that you can identify with that feeling of wanting to do something more, either in the profession that you're in, or feeling kind of stifled and stymied. And when you get that feeling, I think it's a gift, and I think it's a pull, it's a tug, from whatever you believe in, to kind of shift, move. It's shepherding you along the trail. It's walking you closer to home, as Ram Dass says, and that's what it is. And I think if you don't listen to it, it keeps coming back. So if I had a dream to become, one idea that I had for a business when my kids were really young, is I was going to open a food trailer and make ground bag lunches in the morning, and figure where I could put the trailer right by the school, so that parents could drive through, and I could give all the moms coffee, and I could hand them 3 lunch bags that were full of really healthy food. And I thought that would be so fun. I could do that. But, I didn't stick to that idea. I just kind of thought of it. I wrote down some ideas around it, and then I didn't do it, and it didn't come back to me. So I think some of it is what keeps returning to you.
Right.
That is the deeper thing, something you really love, that maybe you can figure out, how can I do this for a living?
And I want to go back to something you just said a little bit ago, which was that you took ukulele lessons, or you learned to play the ukulele and you took hula hoop lessons to
Uh-huh.
connect to the childlike self. Why the childlike self?
Because I think we're in wonder when we're children. And I don't think we take things for granted. And I think once we start being adults, we become passive and we take incredible things like getting to see, a sunrise for granted. And we miss the wonder. And I think when you're a child, I have a really good friend it's Trish Murphy, who her and I always talk about it. And it's, I remember being a kid and I couldn't wait to get home and do like an hour's worth of cartwheels on my front lawn. That was the most exciting thing I could imagine in third grade, was getting to go home and be with my best friend Katie and do, cartwheels all over the front lawn. And I look back on it now and I think, well, it was the wonder of that. It was just the free, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do anything. And there's no one that's going to tell me I'm going to be defined by my gender or all these society rules that I can't do it. And yes, those do exist, obviously, in our society, but they're always going to be there. And so I think you have to go back to this space of wonder. I wonder what I'm going to do next. And I would often say that to myself when I was feeling really down about being in school, especially when we started writing papers, because I'm a writer, I'm a playwright, but I'm not good at writing academic papers. I'm really a poor writer academically, I would say. And so I would sit and think, I wonder what the heck is going to happen. I wonder how I'm going to finish this paper. I wonder what is going to happen. But the answer to that always by the morning when I turn the paper in is, I wonder what I'm going to take next semester. I wonder what it's going to be like when I sit in a hospital with someone for the first time. And so I would consciously retool those kind of fears into something productive around the wonder. Mm-hmm. And that's absolutely why I took the ukulele and the hula hoop, because it was the only way to quiet my mind and teach myself that I could learn new things, even though I was closing in on 50, that I could still learn new things and make my body remember that too.
Yeah. And I think you also said something a little bit ago, which was that all the rules and constructs that, when we're adults that we sort of find ourselves conforming to, fall away when you remove the word can't.
Exactly.
As a kid, you never think you can't.
Exactly.
In fact, it's your job to push your parents and say, I can.
That's right. It's like Thomas the Train. I think I can. Or whatever the train, the little engine that could, that did. And so I would just, and I still do that. I do that all the time. I still have to tell myself, oh, I can do it. It's okay. I'll be able to figure it out. A lot of times I'll say I'll be able to figure it out.
Did you experience any setbacks or significant failure during this time, or even say before this time, because you had a business of your own before, and how have you dealt with those?
I do still experience great failure. Mostly I nap, but then when I wake up, I think, well, I can learn from that. And before, when I was in PR, the failures were really big. And so in PR, especially if you're a book PR person, you get told no all the time. You're really a salesman. And so you can have something that's extraordinary that a client wrote or a client is doing, and you can still get told no. And so I had to learn very early on, no doesn't mean you failed. It just means no to this, but continue on. And so in school, I would say the failure I experienced was when I had to take Greek in the summer for 9 weeks. And every week I would do the homework and just spend about 2 hours crying, realizing that I didn't know Greek. And so, but I kept going back to class, and I kept, practicing and trying to learn it. And I knew I had to finish it. So it's just kind of trying to, I call it swimming in molasses, where you're swimming, you're above the molasses, but your strokes are real slow, but your head's still above the molasses. So you're not drowning. You're okay. You're gonna keep moving forward. But if you're aware of it and you can talk to yourself and say, this is a bad feeling, but It's not me. It's just this feeling, and I'm going to move ahead. Sometimes I would do lists of things that I had already accomplished, like I got 2 loads of clothes done today. I updated my LinkedIn profile, whatever it might be, to kind of show me that I was moving forward.
That's a good piece of advice. So let's kind of address the notion of reinvention. Is it for everybody?
Well, I think so, or, Dr. Ruth, I'm reading this book by her that's called, she has this phrase in there called, I don't retire, I rewire. And so I think reinvention, even in little ways, can aid us, reinventing how we use our time, reinventing what we value, reinventing how much of the world we want to have every day, especially with all the electronics and all the social media and all of that. Kind of taking back, reinventing how we're going to use our time is really purposeful. You can't take, a million digital photos with you when you pass away, and you're not going to be buried in a Mercedes. So these things that we spend a lot of time acquiring, I think we need to reinvent ideas around them that they're not as meaningful if we're not doing meaningful work. And by meaningful work, again, I don't mean going off and joining the Peace Corps unless you want to do that. I just mean finding something that you love doing that makes you feel good. And I think it is possible to do that no matter what your circumstances. And that's reinventing the way that all of us work in our careers.
Mm-hmm. And so, kind of using that, marching off to whatever that next thing is in your mind, or to take action on it. How can you break it down to baby steps? How can somebody who hasn't done this, who may have not as much grit and courage as you have, how can you break it down to baby steps?
You know what? When I first started doing, and I appreciate you saying I have great courage. I don't know if that's true, but again, I started plotting it out. I really started reading books about the career that I wanted to be in. I started making lists of things that I was gonna do away with so that I could live on less money. I started asking questions about what other people did to reduce their kind of footprint here so that they could live on less. And I talked to a lot of professional chaplains. And I think so, even if you just took the baby step of getting a book about what you want to do, list making is great. Keeping a journal is great. Telling your secret to friends and family. So you don't wait till the big debut. Hey, I'm a chaplain. You tell them way before so that they're in on your secret and they can move you forward. I think that's probably really powerful.
Excellent. Great. Well, we are here at the top of the hour. I told you it's going to go
Yay!
fast. And I think that I've asked you the key questions that I know I wanted to get in, and I like keeping things on time. So I'm going to turn this over to our audience now.
Okay.
For the live Q&A. And I see a bunch of you here, so I hope you have some questions for Nettie. Anything related to her profession, her past profession, her reinvention, please just find the Q&A box. It might be in your upper left-hand corner. It might be in your upper right-hand corner. It depends on what device you're using. But move your mouse around your Zoom screen perimeter, and it should pop up, and you can type your question in there. So we'll just give everybody a second or two to do that.
I'm waiting for my kids to type in, Mom, when can we come out of the room? Where's the ice cream? Kids, don't watching it
in. We'll see. Kids, you can do that too. So far, we have no questions. Maybe you just answered everything.
I doubt it.
Well, I can ask you another question. If you consider yourself, as you do, an introvert, how do you, on a day-to-day basis, face that down? How do you bring yourself out of your shell?
I purposefully make myself do things that are going to cause me to be with other people so that I keep a good eye on it, because if it was up to me, I'd probably read and nap, and just read all the books that I've always wanted to read. But I know that I have to be in community because it feels good to me to go in and get that charge. And so I purposefully, if I feel like, I've been around too many people and I know I really haven't been, I'll make myself go and be around people because I can feel that pull of just kind of staying at home. And I never try to miss my classes. I know I look like a big doofus at school because I'm always kind of on the front row and I'm older and I use a notebook to take notes. I don't use my laptop. I do it old school with the spiral, but I don't miss classes because I know myself enough to know that if I miss a class, I'll start missing another class because I'll be afraid to go into a big group of people. So I do little things like that to keep on top of it.
So it's almost like you're forcing yourself to be uncomfortable in a situation you know that brings you uncomfort, but you're facing that discomfort.
Exactly. And then once you're there, it's great. You know, it's like going to a concert. Once you get there and you sit in the seat, you're amazed that you're there, and the benefit of being there is incredible. And it's very similar to going into a hospital room where you don't know the person at all, exactly. But you knock on the door and you go in, and it's hard to get over that little threshold, just like it is when you get married, to cross that threshold. And then you go in, and then it's just lovely. It's wonderful.
Right. So you'll have to share with us, but not now, because I do have questions if you have any icebreakers that are good to start those conversations. So let me move to some of the questions here.
Okay.
One, I'm not going to read you by name just in case you want to remain anonymous, folks. So I'm going to say the first question is, was it difficult to balance your work and raising two extremely supportive teenagers?
Is that from one of my teenagers?
I don't know. What is your teenager's name?
The last name is Hartsock, so
yes.
It really may be. Okay.
Yes.
Is that for my college teenager? So I have like whatever it's called in the politics where you have a plant in the room. It was not difficult because I have great teenagers. And I really do. And I was always honest with them that we would be okay, that I would make it work, and that we were going to enjoy our lives together. And that, it's funny because my kids saw when I was doing PR how much that affected my work-life balance. And I remember one time my son was about 5 and I had my iPhone and I was taking him to a movie during the day, and he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, you're not going to take in that picture phone, are you?" And I realized, wow, I take this phone with me everywhere to constantly be checking email. And he's so used to me doing that, even at the movie, that he's telling me, don't do that, in his own way. And so then I would always put my picture phone and I would leave it in the car, somewhere under the seat or whatever. So he would know I wasn't going to do that. But it was a great check to me to understand, hey, you have to have work-life balance.
Right.
So that was very challenging, but I have good kids. So everybody has good kids, obviously, because they're your kids. But
here's another question. Have you found your path to chaplaincy rewarding? It sounds as though you have found happiness in the journey of reinvention. Is that the case?
Yes, but it's very daunting too, because it's pretty hard to get full-time chaplain jobs. They're kind of like librarians. Once they get somewhere, they stay there. And but it's been incredibly rewarding. And even if I got to work half-time as a chaplain and the other half-time I was doing something else, I still want to do it around working with people. It would be fine, because it's really so profound to me that I was able to get there. And that's the other thing I would say is compromise on your ideas of what your reinvention looks like. I'm a real type A, go get 'em person. And I had to really learn how to compromise and not try to be the woman on the top of the mountain at the end of this, because the mountain's always moving and it's hard to keep climbing up there and be on top, and then somebody else has gotten there, you got to move up again. So I would just say compromise on what your ideas are when you take that chance to reinvent yourself.
That's nice. So as a kid, we have so many dreams. How did you zero in on this particular one and know it was the one to pursue?
Is that from my other teen?
No.
Who wants to be a stand-up comedian?
Anonymous attendee who might be your other teen.
Okay. Wow, how do you zero in? I've got what my son wants to be a stand-up comedian, so I'm wondering if he asked that. How did I zero in? Again, it's that I couldn't but not do it. It just got to where it was so powerful to me that I couldn't but not do it. I remember I went to the Irma Bombeck writing conference, and I spoke there. And this was when I was in PR, and I spoke there, and it was a really neat thing because they're amazing people. It's the Irma Bombeck Writers Workshop. They have a conference every 2 years, and it's at Dayton where she went to school. And so Irma's family comes in. It's just incredible. And it was when I was still in PR, and one of my clients was like the lead speaker there. And I remember the only thing that was really, really interesting to me at the conference was talking to one of the priests who knew Irma. And after he had given a talk about how funny, he told all these funny things about Jesus. And I said, I thought that I want to be a chaplain. And I thought, I can't be a chaplain because I like to wear lipstick and I'm funny. And now, because you're funny, it's kind of messed it up for me because it's taken another thing away of why I can be a chaplain. And he said, well, I can't help you with the lipstick, but I can tell you that it's okay to be funny if you're a chaplain. And so it was little things like that that kept telling me, you're going to just be a chaplain. There's no way you're not going to do it.
Right. So it's almost, that's why it's a calling, I think.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you pared back on that I think goes to money?
With money?
Like lifestyle, probably. I'm assuming lifestyle and money.
I pared back on going out to eat. I pared back on how I bought clothes. I started shopping at thrift stores all the time instead of at Macy's and Nordstrom's. I pared back on makeup. I use like $8 Maybelline mascara makeup now, which is great. I actually, my sweetheart he taught me how to go and get a library card, which I hadn't had in, 40 years, since I was probably 10. And I learned the magic of the public libraries in Austin and how, wow, there's actually books there that you can read and check out. You don't have to purchase them. So I stopped
books that you were promoting too, probably.
Yeah, and I stopped buying books. I stopped buying a lot of books, and I pared down. Really, out of my marriage, I had to pare down extensively, anyways. And I got comfortable with having less, and eating out was a big thing. That was a really big thing because the kids and I used to eat out a lot. But now we eat at the table, and we have a no electronics rule, and it's actually lovely and it's really fun. And my kids have learned how to cook some stuff on their own. So it's been pretty cool to go back to eating together at a table at a time, not in a car, not in a drive-through,
That's very
not with people around.
So I'm going to give you about a minute for this last question because we're up against the clock. But
okay.
Somebody wants to know, how many times in your life do you think we have the opportunity to reinvent?
Every day until the day you die. Because I think if you look at reinvention as a way that I feel it's looking at what's in front of you, and you have a moment to get to interpret it in a different way if it would move you forward on your path. So I think every day you have that.
Great. Well, I'm going to wrap things up now. And anybody who's listening, if there are last minute questions that we didn't get to ask Nettie, please feel free to email them to me at webcasts@reinventionworks.com. I'm going to toss us back over to our slide share so we can tell everybody how to get a hold of you. This is Nettie's contact information, Nettie Reynolds. She can be found on Twitter at @NetReynolds. And you can also friend request her on Facebook. I hope some of you in the audience will come back for future webcasts here at Reinvention Works. You can find out about our whole schedule by going to reinventionworks.com/webcasts or just reinventionworks.com. Our handle on Twitter is singular Reinvention Work because works is too many characters for that darn Twitter. And our next guest next week is another reinventionist. His name is Paul Silber. He's currently an angel investor and a mentor, but he started out as a PhD with a toxicology degree and working in a lab, and just found that a lab was not for him. So then he founded a business, and he grew the business and sold it for, nice chunk of change. And so he's had to reinvent himself multiple times as well. His story should be super interesting. So I hope you sign up for that. We're always here Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please share and tell your friends. Register. And if you are active on social media with hashtags, our hashtag is Reinvention Works, plural, because that is our name. And we're also interested in sponsors. So if you like this webcast and know anybody who might want to reach an audience like ours, people who are looking to change, reinvent, recreate, pivot, transition, transform, any kind of word like that,
Yay!
we've got them. So I'm going to thank everybody for taking the time with us this evening. I'm going to be stopping the recording and then ending our meeting. I thank you so much. I hope I see you all next week. And Nettie, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. It was an honor.
Yay. Okay, bye-bye, everybody. See you next week.